John, you got 10 seconds on it?
One of the things that I've seen very recently is the DoD has recently actually tested a jet using algae-based biofuels, completely untethered from the petrochemical industry, very successful, and they've contracted with an advanced biofuels maker to provide them with enough to test a fleet's worth and make sure that it's actually going to meet our needs. What our veterans are doing, I'm part of a network of hundreds of veterans across the nation called Operation Free, who are out and beating the streets and talking to people just like you around the country and talking to our senators here on the Hill to try to get them to support this bill.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. And again, thank you for your service. I'd like now to introduce to you our next panel. And in our next panel, we want to talk about increasing America's oil independence. And our first and distinguished panelist is, let's bring up Helder Rodriguez. She's president and co-founder of NovaCharge, which is a very interesting company based out of Florida. As president of NovaCharge, she's leading the charge to deliver the next generation fueling infrastructure that it will enable, among other things, plug-in electric vehicles to change the way we work and play and drive. So Helder, welcome to you. Have a seat. And we'd like to welcome Senator Jeff Merkley. Senator Jeff Merkley, Democrat from Oregon. Hello, Senator. How are you? Good to see you. Have a seat. His public service began as a 19-year-old intern about, what, 3-4 years ago? Yeah, exactly. With Oregon's former senator, whom I knew and worked with quite closely when I was over at CNN, Senator Mark Hatfield. Merkley was elected to his state legislature in 1998, elected Democratic leader in 2003, Speaker in 2007, elected to the U.S. Senate in 2008, where he serves on the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs, Environment, Public Works Committee. Last week, Senator Merkley introduced the Oil Independence for a Stronger America Act to set into law his goal of achieving actual, what he refers to, and he will explain, independence from oil to actually bring oil consumption down. So, Senator, welcome again to you. Thank you. What? Let me ask you to take just a moment, if you would, to explain what your Energy Act is all about.
You bet. The basic premise is that we would rather have an oil-independent, stronger America than a weaker, oil-addicted America. To give you just the very brief snapshot of this, we know that we're sending $1 billion a day overseas for oil. During my campaign, it was $2 billion because oil spiked. I have no doubt that though the price at the pump has come down, it will go back up. We have demand growing in all parts of the world. So it makes sense for America to strategically position itself so that it's generating its energy and keeping those dollars here, building jobs in America, building the strength of our economy in America, rather than sending the dollars overseas. Same for national security. It's a tremendous cost to provide the national security apparatus to sustain access to foreign oil. And in addition, a lot of those petrodollars end up in the hands of terrorist organizations. As a number of security analysts have pointed out, these wars that we are in now, in Afghanistan and in Iraq, are wars in which we're funding both sides, which really doesn't make sense. So there are a number of strategies through which we can significantly reduce our consumption of oil. We can reduce it by more, in terms of millions of gallons a day, by more than we're projected to be importing from overseas 20 years from now. To have a 20-year sustained strategy, though, we need to have an apparatus that keeps us focused on it. So we create a National Energy Security Council in the Office of the President to keep proposing regulations, keep proposing legislation, keep proposing policies to keep us on track to the national goal. Some of those key strategies are more efficient passenger vehicles with plug-ins and electric vehicles, certainly better transportation options. You can just leave up the overview because we have so little time here. More efficient metropolitan transportation options, and invite you all out to Portland, Oregon and Eugene, Oregon, where we're experimenting with a number of those as our communities around the country. Better freight efficiency, both in terms of trucks on the roads and shifting freight into barges and rail, substitution in terms of natural gas and advanced biofuels for petroleum, and finally, where heating oil is used, more efficient buildings. So those are the key strategies that can save 8.3 million gallons a day equivalent in 20 years from now, and that will exceed the amount we'd be importing. It's not an issue of technology. It is an issue of political will. Do we have the will for a stronger, oil-independent America?
Thank you, Senator. And I've read the components of your bill, and what the critics, skeptics, and many in industry will say is if you are forcing the hand of industry for additional fuel efficiency in this way, we've heard these arguments before, some bear merit, some don't, but your response, please, that this will add tremendous cost and hurt jobs on the auto industry and other sectors.
You know, it's fascinating to hear those criticisms because indeed the cost of imported oil is a huge inefficiency in our economy. And we have, as one piece of this is the electric car initiative, where we're basically laying out a strategy to do half a dozen pilot projects around the country under different circumstances to help solve the chicken and egg problem between plug-in vehicles and plug-in infrastructure, and to take the lessons of those pilot projects and apply them. In terms of research dollars, this is a very, very modest investment with a huge potential upside return. And I could work my way through the other areas, but the more you get into the details, come to realize that, yes, there are industries that are tied in to our oil addiction that keep coming back time and time again to try to thwart efforts to have a coherent national strategy. What we have to have is a recognition to get into the details and into the analysis enough to realize we'll be much better off positioning ourselves as an oil-independent nation.
Helda, you and your company are working on the plug-in hybrids in the Tampa area. What'll it take? If you had the cars out there now, which we don't have quite yet, you got to plug them in someplace.
Absolutely, and meeting the challenges of the chicken and the egg is a very, very real problem. We are involved with ChargePoint America, which will deploy thousands of units throughout the U.S. 9 target cities were selected as a pilot program. We're working with Ford, GM, and Smart to make sure that that infrastructure is in place, to make it easy for people to charge their vehicles. The cars are a very small part, but a critical part of this equation, because as we increase revenue for these utilities, they have that money to reinvest in clean energy and to really grow this economy. And that's really what this is about. It's about creating jobs. These vehicles will put people to work, revitalize a very, very critical industry in our country, and allow us to gain that independence. You know, at what point do we say we are willing to pay the price for our dependency on this oil? We sacrifice our air quality with coal-burning plants. We pay more for fossil fuels. Driving an electric vehicle will save hundreds of dollars for the average consumer. We lose lives protecting the pipeline. It's time, you know, to take a stand, and the electric vehicles are a small part, but a critical part of making that happen.
Senator, you've looked at this and you've looked at the timeline, and you address it to some extent or to a large extent actually, in your legislation. So the Nissan Leaf is available. The Chevy Volt is soon to be available, but very much front-end technology on this plug-in hybrids. But to get the charge points that are going to be needed, this infrastructure that we're going to talk about, what would a city like Portland have to do? What is your trajectory of, say, the next 10 years? It takes 12 years to turn the auto fleet over, at least. So what's your trajectory as to when we have a significant, viable plug-in fleet? Is that anywhere in the immediate time frame?
You know, I think what we're going to find is that in various cities around the country, it's going to vary. I was just reading yesterday that my home city of Portland is launching their own electric charging station initiative.